Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Good evening, Canucks fans. My name is Mark, and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. This is an interesting. It's going to be an interesting episode just because of the fact that the Canucks beat the Avalanche today 4-1 in a very commanding fashion, and in all honesty, they beat them in peak playoff form. But unfortunately, to no avail. The win doesn't mean too much just because of the fact that the Canucks are no longer in a playoff spot. But there's lots to talk about tonight. But before we get into that, let's shift into Hyperdrive and get ready for a fun ride with your go-to source for all of the biggest stories in hockey, delivered with a unique blend of Quebecois flavor. Hyperdrive Hockey brings you top-tier analysis, the latest news, pop culture, and a lively atmosphere that sparks debate, gets you thinking, and keeps you entertained. Join Max, Daphne, and Kevin every Monday and Thursday for your dose of everything hockey. Watch on YouTube, on the Game Over Network channel, or subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon. For more, visit our website at thegameovernetwork.com. So, before I get to any of the Canucks news that may or may not have come out today, I want to quickly go over today's game, just to more so get it out of the way, but also because of the fact that I'm pretty sure this isn't the most important thing that we're going to be talking about tonight. Even though the Canucks won pretty well, I would say. The Canucks really look like a team that if this was a playoff team, they'd be able to fight really hard, especially like a team like the Avs. Even though they were without one of their star players, it was a very deciding win. Just to start off, the first period was very quiet. However, Kevin Lankinen was playing on fire tonight. He came out of the gate like a brick wall, let nothing behind him. The entirety of the first period, granted, it was a 0-0 first period, but especially considering how effective the Avs offense can be, even if it is a whether or not it's on the power play or on even strength, they are a very good team overall, and it's one thing to play well against a mediocre team, but with a team with the offensive presence as the Avs and being able to stretch out, not overthink any of your positioning, to not bite on any of the fake chances and the one-timer potentials that the Avs were giving them. Lankinen played great tonight. That first period, though, it was quiet. We did get two power plays, but nothing came from it. But going into the second period, though, Jake DeBrusk had a very cheeky backhand from a pass into the slot from Kiefer Sherwood, making it 1-0 Canucks. And the one thing I was realizing is that it was mainly the role players that showed up today. I didn't see much from Besser, I will say. I didn't really see much from like Peter Suter, bar none. I'll honestly even say I didn't see too much from Quinn Hughes, but it was players like DeBrusk, Kiefer Sherwood, Dakota Joshua, who actually makes another play in the neutral zone, who just set up the Canucks' second goal by Kiefer Sherwood, which I always forget that this guy in the minors was a goal scorer. He shifted his game in Nashville to be a physical presence, and obviously this year he expanded on that. But I want to say that his shots are extremely underrated, and that if he's able to improve on this next season, I think playing him beside PD would be amazing. moving on, Devon Taves from the point gets one past Lankinen, which makes it 2-1. 2-1 Avs. That goal, in all honesty, was a very... There was lots of screening in front of Lankinen, but it was honestly just a really nice shot from Devon Taves. Quickly moving into the third period, Lankinen again makes a lot of saves where he doesn't overcomplicate things too much. He's able to position well to go against a lot of the one-timers that the Avs are putting on him. And speaking of Dakota Joshua, he gets another goal off of the rebound, which makes it 3-1 Canucks. I wanted to quickly talk about, other than, in terms of the score, that was basically it, except for a empty net goal from Nils Höglander. But one thing that I really, really wanted to point out was the emergence of Elias Persson. Or is it Elias Persson? Welcome to the couch I've been sleeping for the rest of the season. Hello, Volbill, and hello, Mr. Wilkins. Welcome to the stream. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, anyways, Elias Persson, or DPD, with his first NHL fight, and I think it's safe to say that other than, I guess, Kiefer Sherwood or Pius Suter, he has been a breath of fresh air and a really nice surprise for this Canucks team. I feel like it would have been really cool to see him in the playoffs, where toughness matters so much more, since you only really have a day off per game. But he looks so natural out there. He does not look like a rookie. I'm very glad that my prediction early on in the season, where he will not be touching NHL ice because I thought he was too green, I'm so glad that was wrong, because his composure out there, his ability to be a big body but not be stuck and not to trip over his feet when he's defending. Like, I feel like his defensive awareness is so high considering how young he is. So I'm really, really excited to to see him and the future of the Canucks, basically. But that is basically the first. That is basically the entire game recap. Kaja, hello Kaja. Everyone, if in chat, if you guys can all say congrats to Kaja, because I believe she just finished her last essay. Is that right? So congrats on graduating. I'll see you there in like 6-7 years. But yeah, that's basically for the game recap. I actually want to talk about more, at least in terms of today's episode, just because at the end of the day, even though this was a nice win for the Canucks, there are a lot to talk about if you want to pinpoint everything. But at the end of the day, we are unfortunately not in the playoff race anymore. So although the win did come from the team really trying to to push through these final games with their heads up high, you could tell with, like, for example, with Dak's goal, I'd say every goal except for Kiefer Sherwood's, they scored and then immediately became nonchalant. Like, it was very obvious that the goals didn't mean much except for, I guess, stat padding. But in order to look towards the future, I want to talk about the contracts and the entire situation that the Canucks are going through right now. But before I get into that, are you guys looking to support an up-and-coming media company with over 30 young journalists and analysts across Canada? If you guys have a few bucks to spare, head over to the Patreon page at patreon.com/thegameovernetwork. You will find several tiers with awesome rewards and perks for helping us grow. Get exclusive access, behind-the-scenes content, Discord benefits, merch discounts, opportunities to provide feedback, and even join us live for special shows where you can interact with hosts as we launch new ways to enhance your experience. Not able to pitch in financially? that's okay. We have a free tier so you don't miss out. If you want to help in other ways, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app, and share our content on your social media. Cool. So there, I believe it was a media interview today, if I can confirm that. But essentially, long story short, if you guys have not seen this, Brock Besser has announced that it's very unlikely that he comes back to the Canucks next season. And it's kind of a tough thing to hear, but something that based off of the way that entire season has gone, it's very it's you can't really blame him, you know. It sucks a lot to see one of the longest homegrown talents that we have on the team come out and say that. And I think, as both a Canucks fan and as a realist, I do not blame him for leaving at all. Because for one, you traded away one of the closest people to Besser on the team, both like off the ice and on regarding on ice chemistry. As well as the fact that the what's it called? Upper management basically told media that his value is super low, and that he's not playing well to the point where like he deserves a new contract. And if I were Besser, or actually I'll say it this way: if you change Brock Besser's position to any other job, so let's just say if this situation was happening at a random retail store, so let's say Zoomies, just as an example. If Brock Besser was an employee at Zoomies, where your favorite coworker gets transferred to another store because of an altercation with management, as well as the fact that your managers and your bosses are basically telling social media and the rest of the company that you're really bad at your job and you don't deserve a raise, I would want to leave too. Honestly, like, it's an unfortunate situation, and even though I'm on the fence on whether or not I want to sign him, because as much as he did have a 40-goal season last season, even though he is a longer tenured Canuck, other than Demko, I feel like with the money that he's asking for, it's very tough to accept the fact that he might not be worth it. And that being said, if you look at the rest of the potential free agents that we could sign, just to look at the list right now, Mitch Marner is not going to come to the Canucks. He's going to most likely stay as a Maple Leaf. John Tavares, I don't see coming here. Nick Ehlers, possibly. However, other than being a faster Brock Besser, I'm not too sure if he honestly would even leave the Jets. And it's a very bleak free agency period, and I feel like based off of the other contracts that were signed and extended in the middle of the season, asking for $8 million on an 8-year contract is a tough ask, but I also do feel like he would get that on the open market because of the lack of skill on the free agency market. That being said, if we look at the other free agents that the Canucks have, so let's see, where's my list? Okay, so in terms of unrestricted free agents, aka players that we don't have the right to, aka can't be offer sheeted by other teams. You have Brock Besser, Pius Suter, Derek Forbort, and Noah Juleson. And I think, considering the fact that if we accept the fact that we're not going to re-sign Besser, what are the odds that we sign Suter? Because the one thing that is that you do have to acknowledge with this Canucks team is that we're playing a lot of AHLers. Like, just looking at like tonight's lineup, you had Nils Aman, Linus Carlson, Aturatu, Max Sasson, and like considering that like we were playing so many other AHLers on the main roster, like you had Jonathan Lekerimaki, who I hope makes the top six next season. But you have like Archie Baines. It's like I feel like Mr. Wilkins makes a great point. I don't think anyone would want to sign here after this season. It's a tough thing to ask, and I will say that considering the body language of the players in this last few games, as well as the amount of great things that current players have said about the Canucks, and the Canucks organization last year, if you're not in like a Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson contract situation where upper management is just bagging on you to sign a contract or else we're gonna lower your value, like other than that, I've only ever heard positive things about the players talking about the organization. And sure, you know what? These players are media trained. I'm sure they are trained to not crap on your employer. But going back into the who we should resign, I think if we don't resign Besser, the possibility of elevating Pius Suter into a top six forward, like if you have to pay him 4.5, I think 5 mil is a bit of a stretch. But if we pay him 4.5 mil, like he'd still be making less than Connor Garland, more than Filipino. I think if we're gonna value a player purely based off of his contract, I think 4.5 for like a 5 years, 4.5 AAV would be decent for Suter. That being said, we wouldn't necessarily have more money to sign anyone else though. That would be the thing. We have Aturatu and Max Sasson though as RFAs. I really want to extend Aturatu. Hopefully, if he gets offer sheeted, I really hope that we match the offer sheet towards whoever team wants to try to steal him away from us. I really hope he doesn't become though like a Dylan Holloway on the Oilers, where as soon as he gets offer sheeted and leaves for St. Louis, he becomes like 10 times better. I feel like if someone were to offer Aturatu or even Max Sasson, that, knowing our luck, that would most likely happen. Just quickly talk about the defensemen though regarding contracts. You have Derek Forbort and Noah Juleson. I personally think Noah Juleson's NHL career might be over. He was already a fringe 70, and although, like I've said this the entire season, although Juleson has had a lot of highlights on the PK, he has 4 times the amount of lowlights regarding everything else. Like, if you were to talk about the pros and cons of his game, the pros would be his penalty killing skills, but the cons I would say is hockey overall. So it's considering the fact that he's injured, it's gonna take a lot of reconditioning just to get back into like back into NHL form, but considering the amount of like young defensemen coming up in the league right now, looking to take his place on the Canucks or on any other team, it's tough. It's tough to say and admit because at the end of the day, he is homegrown talent. Um, and Mr. Wilkins has a great point because like seeing his effort, even if his effort results in him overplaying, it's great. It's nice to see that versus like a player that refuses to back check or forecheck. I mean, hopefully he if he's able to turn this around though, come back from injury, and become a solid role player for a team, I will happily eat my words. But it's a tough ask, I will say. Um, the question that does need to be asked though is, do you re-sign Derek Forbort? Forbort, I believe, signed on a 1 year, 1.5 mil contract last offseason. But I think it's safe to say that his presence, both as a vet on the um, on the ice and with a high defensive IQ, even though his skill might not be there, I think re-signing him for the same contract or lower would be beneficial. Um, Other than let's say like Marcus Pettersson, who is 28, and like the only vets on the defensive end are Derek Forbort and Tyler Myers. And I think, base like ignoring his game, I think you re-sign him just for that. Like I thought it was really dumb that we didn't sign Ian Cole, like re-sign Ian Cole, because even though he was touted as a defensive liability in the playoffs because of the fact that he was a defensive liability in the playoffs, his veteran leadership was like based off of what last year's Canucks have said, his leadership in the locker room was extremely high. And he's playing in the NHL for a while, and you need players like that because I'm just looking at the team right now in terms of ages, and the only players that are above 30 are Sherwood, Teddy Bluger, Tyler Myers, and Derek Forbort. So a TLDR of what I've just said, I think we signed Derek Forbort purely because of the fact that um what's it called? Purely because of the fact that he is a great veteran presence in the locker room. One thing that I actually do want to quickly tout on, just because I mentioned it for a quick second, but regarding the whole Besser situation, about how it's tough to accept the fact that he's not going to re-sign here, but the one thing that I want to kind of point out on the one thing I want to single out from the entire situation, at least right now, is like the way that management has dealt with like re-signing their top players. Like, is it just me, or does whenever the Canucks have a star that wants to re-sign, there's like way too much pressure on them to re-sign, to the point where if you don't sign a contract right away, us as in the management, we're gonna look at you as a villain, and that you are a bad guy, and you are a bad guy because of the fact that you're not signing this contract right now, when in reality he could just wait until the off season and see what the Canucks have to say. Like they did this with Besser, they did this with PD last season. They're kind of also doing it with Tocchet in a way, where even like Tocchet's, as soon as news breaks out that Tocchet's contract is over, what's it called? There's talks about like, oh, I don't think, I don't think he should resign because of the fact that he's been a bad coach. And no matter what your thoughts on Rick Tocchet is, hearing this from your employers and your bosses is it's not great mentally at all. And it's a very tough ask to want to resign when the whole negotiation process of getting you back onto the team is so rough. Like it's tough seeing this here, and then you see stuff in like Pittsburgh, for example, where like I just imagine Sidney Crosby goes into the office, sits down, says, "I want 8.7 mil." The front office says yes, and they leave. I wish we had that type of contract negotiation. But if this is the trend that we're gonna see next year, the villain, I guess the media villain, is going to be Demko. Because, what's it called? Once next year's free agency starts, like you have Demko, Garland, Bluger, and Kiefer Sherwood all as expiring contracts. And I feel like, considering the fact that Teddy Bluger and Sherwood are role players, even though Sherwood has been amazing, who I honestly think if he keeps this up, he's going to get a fat raise in the offseason. But it's a tough ask to sit through that entire situation for an entire year. Yeah, so Mr. Wilkins says it's tough to see the team sign others within days when they really want them. What do you mean by that? Sorry, I think I confused myself with what you said. But what was I saying? But yeah, going back to, I guess, Demko next season, it might be a tough ask to extend. I feel like, based off of the fact that we did re-sign Lankinen to 4.5 mil for 3 years, that there's pressure for him to perform just so what's it called? There's pressure on him to perform just so he can get another contract with the Canucks. I could totally see front management being like, or front office being like, okay, we re-signed Lankinen, aka you are expendable. And if you hear that, especially if that gets around the media in the beginning of the season, like I said, if it's a mental block that hits Demko in that season and starts to underperform, it's not Demko's fault. In a way, it's kind of on management. Look how long it took them to sign DPD. I think DPD I would put as like the... I do understand what you're saying now, though, because like this did also happen with Hronek last year. DPD, though, I still thought was really raw heading into this season. So I could kind of see them not wanting to re-sign DPD right away. But at the end of the day, I'm not in the Canucks front office, so I'm not entirely sure what goes on with the negotiations. And in all honesty, these guys get paid millions of dollars to make decisions that if I had to make one in 5 seconds, I wouldn't be able to make that decision well, I think. So I will give them that benefit of the doubt. But yeah, moving on to the third stream period. If you guys are enjoying the show, you probably want more, right? So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you are alerted when we go live. If you are tuning in to our podcast, please drop a 5-star review, 5-star rating, or leave us a positive review. If you really like what we're doing, follow us on your favorite social media platforms. You can find the Game Over Network on Blue Sky at thegameovernetwork.com, on TikTok and Twitter at GameOverNHL, and on Instagram, Threads, and LinkedIn at Game Over Network. Okay, so I wanted to see. Okay, so one thing about me as a Canucks fan and as a Game Over host is that I always try my best to look at the positive and to be an optimist on, like, you know what, if the Canucks have a 5% chance to make the playoffs, there's still that 5% chance, so I'm going to cheer for that 9% chance. Um, However, obviously this season has not hit the expectations of what we wanted the team to do. However, even though there's a lot of negativity going on around that, I wanted to talk about some of the wins that we had as a Canucks team. So in chat actually, so I'll combine this with the overtime period today. In chat, if there's anything like any wins that you thought the Canucks had, please put them in the chat. This season has made it tough, honestly, very tough. Hence why I wanted to talk about it today. And you know what? I'll start it off actually with Kiefer Sherwood hitting the NHL record for most hits in a season. I think considering the fact that he came in as someone that Quinn Hughes recommended Jim Rutherford and Patrick Lavigne to sign. He, honestly, like without Sherwood, we would be way past the are we going to make the playoffs or not conversation. Like we would have moved past that in January. Especially since Dak was coming from an off season where his main battle wasn't hockey. Like he didn't necessarily have the training camp to catch up, which by all means I'm perfectly okay with based off of the situation. Plus, he was able to showcase how good he really is today. But if it wasn't for Kiefer Sherwood, we wouldn't have that toughness on the team that we had. So if, considering the fact that we still have him for one more season next year, if he keeps it up, I will be extremely happy for that. One thing I also want to talk about is Tyler Myers, who, for some reason, oh, actually no, not for some reason, but when we were paying him $6 million a year, I will admit, Tyler Myers, horrible. Like I went to a game once last season where every single time Tyler Myers touched the puck, someone in front of me would literally scream line change Myers, and then Tyler Myers would leave right away. And I had that same feeling kind of where I didn't really want this guy. I didn't want this guy touching the puck. I didn't want him to make plays. My heart would drop every time I would see an opposing two-on-one, and it was just Tyler Myers defending. But this season has completely shifted my mindset on him. He is playing his role to a T, especially when he's playing with Quinn Hughes. And if you guys remember that one game where Tyler Myers played better than Quinn Hughes, I think it's a great shout. As far as veteran leadership comes, I'm grateful that he is still on this team. And I feel like, because once the contract's over, he's going to be 37. I feel like he's going to run this contract out and then retire by the end of it. But if this is the Tyler Myers that we're going to be getting for his last 2 years, by all means, I'm excited to see that. And the last, I guess, positive of the season is actually, you know what? I have 4 now because of Pius Suter. But I'll quickly talk about my third, and that is the return of Thatcher Demko. I will say it was disappointing to see that for a point it was Seelovs versus Lankinen for the starting position. I was okay with Demko being injured for the first half when what's it called? Especially coming off of last season's playoffs, I was perfectly fine with Demko being out for a bit and then relying on Seelovs. But as soon as his weakness came into play, and as soon as other teams realize that if you just take a shot from the point, it's probably going to go in 50% of the time. Obviously, like Seelovs has been tearing it in Abbotsford, um, which I honestly hope results in an Abbey win. Oh, sorry, a strong Abbotsford playoff run. But what was it? Oh yeah, but the fact that we had Lankinen coming back and essentially being the main starter for this team was nice. However, it was very obvious that we weren't playing with a Vezina Trophy goalie anymore. And when Demko came back, I will be honest, I I was worried that, especially since like if you're a goalie and you get a knee injury because of the fact that you basically have to stand with Disney knees the entire time, it's going to be a lot of strain on your knees. But with Demko's recent games, if he stays healthy and we have a tandem of a healthy Demko and Lankinen, we could see another Corey Schneider, Roberto Luongo type season where both goalies are able to act as elite goalies, but barring the fact that hopefully Demko doesn't get injured again. Um, hey Elfrin, how's it going? In terms of what we're talking about right now, we're just talking about the positives of this season. I didn't want to have this episode or like the last few episodes end in a rant, or I didn't want to have these last few games in a negative point, just because realistically speaking, after this episode, we're probably gonna only look at negative stuff about the Canucks. So right now I'm just talking about all of the positives that came out of the season. And the fourth point is Pius Suter. And like with 24 goals this season, like when Elias Pettersson and Filipino went out on injury, all the memes coming out were like, "Oh man, Pius Suter is our 1C. He's our first center." Um, Seeing him first on the depth chart, and then what's it called? And then having like Max Sasson and Aturatu behind him, it was a tough watch, but he stepped it up immensely. At the end of the season, and like if we made the playoffs, I think we would have Pius Suter to not blame, but we would have Suter to thank for pushing us to that point. I'm because of like his play, I'm not sure if going back to what I said earlier on in the show, I'm not too sure if I trust Suter to keep this up again next season. But if he is, I would say re-signing him for like a 3 year. I thought we would sign him for 3 years, but like let's say like a 4 or 5 year at 4.5 mil would that would be pretty good. Positives: LinkedIn, Sherwood, and Dak beating cancer. Yes, sir. Kiefer Sherwood with 2 points. Absolutely. I think I love. I will say I love it when I'm wrong. And one thing that I always thought would be wrong was having Dakota Joshua and Kiefer Sherwood on the same line, because in my head they're the same player in a sense. But the two of them tonight have both been fantastic. Uh, so I will give them that. What else? I want to think of one. I want us to think of one more positive that came of the season before we wrap up tonight. Oh, actually, Quinn Hughes Hart Trophy run. If I think to think that Quinn Hughes took a step like a step above his season last year seems so far fetched, especially since he won the Norris Trophy last year. But if he stayed healthy, like if he wasn't injured for those few weeks where he was gone, and if Quinn Hughes, and if the Canucks made the playoffs, I do, I actually do see him pushing for a Hart Trophy. Now, obviously, it's a big ask because of the fact that he was gone for a bit, as well as the fact that we didn't make the playoffs. So giving the Hart Trophy to a player who wasn't able to carry his team to the playoffs is a tough ask. But I will say his season has been so fun to watch, and if he keeps it up and he stays healthy next year, if he gives the same level of production, I strongly believe that he could push for a Hart nomination. Aturatu finishes strong. Aturatu actually good shouts. Great shout actually. He's someone who impressed me a lot in the beginning of the season, and ending off the season, I think based off of his versatility and utility, I could definitely see him being a full-time member of the team next year. Like, people talk about how our team this year was a bunch of AHLers, and if you look at the depth chart, that's basically what it is. But Aturatu really stood out from everyone else, and made a name for himself. So, you know what? We need strong face-offs, and if Aturatu is going to become our 2026 Manny Malhotra, I will take it. But yeah, that is basically all I have for tonight. We will still be having shows for the rest of the season. If any of you guys are aware, the last few, what's it called? Speaking for me, Zach, and Kaya, I just want to apologize for the lack of shows that we've had, just because our scheduling for the three of us has been pretty tough. But we are always excited to have the opportunity to host the show for you guys. So our next show will be this Saturday against the Wild. Actually, great question. I think Ratu could be the next Horvat? I don't think, basing off of potential wise, I don't think he has the offensive upside, in all honesty. Because Horvat out of the gate, he what's it called? He was showing glimpses of a strong offensive game, even though his utility was already great. But I don't think Aturatu is gonna reach Horvat levels of skill. I do see him building his game though to match his. Like if he develops, like in some way, if he can become our bumper in the first power play, if that's his ceiling, then he could be the next Horvat based off of that. And yeah, so even though he has had 5 goals in the last 8 games, like there are glimpses of a good game from like a good offensive game. And if I'm wrong, I'm very happy to be wrong. But being the next Horvat, I feel like it would be a tough ask. However, I will say that although I don't see him becoming the next Horvat, I do see him becoming a very I do see us utilizing him a lot in the top 6. Not so much as an offensive threat. Like I said, even though he has had 5 goals in the last 8 games. This might be a bad take, but even though he is an offensive threat, I see him more as a strong utility forward. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great question, though. Great question. What was I saying? Oh yeah, okay. So our next game, like I said, is this Saturday, against the Wild, which Kaya, I believe, will be hosting. Um, I also believe if Marc-Andre Fleury isn't, I think, was Marc-Andre Fleury supposed to start this game, or did he start today? You think he'd be a 3C for the future? I mean, he would be filling like a Manny Malhotra role, and considering that, obviously, since he's played games in Abbey, I actually do want to continue this conversation, by the way, because it's a great question. Considering that he was able to grow his game under Malhotra in Abbey, I think third center is his floor. Like, his ceiling is pretty high, but like I said, I don't see him as the next Horvat. Just because I do think his game is slightly different, is what I'm trying to get at with that. But I think third C is a good floor for him. I mean, I will say, side note, Aturatu always pops off in NHL 25. So if, what's it called? If EA can predict the fact that he becomes a top 6 forward, like I believe he's always like as an elite low, where like he has the chance to become it. I'll take it. Yeah, cool. I'll take it. Thanks, man. Awesome. But anyways, I think at that note we'll leave it from there. Like I said, my name is Mark Sianquita. Thank you guys for watching Game Over Vancouver. We will see you on Saturday. Have a good night.